Senator, the Vice President.
Welcome to History Everywhere. Today, let's delve into the riveting presidential race of 1960, where two iconic figures, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, battled for the highest office in the United States. Chapter 1: Background and Rise of JFK. Our story begins with John F. Kennedy, a charismatic senator from Massachusetts. Born into a politically influential family, Kennedy's rise was meteoric. His youth, eloquence, and vision for a new frontier resonated with a nation hungry for change. In the 1960 Democratic Party primaries, John F. Kennedy faced notable opponents before securing the party's nomination. The key contenders he defeated in the primaries included Lyndon B. Johnson, who was a seasoned politician and Senate Majority Leader, initially entered the race but withdrew to focus on his role as Majority Leader. He would later become Kennedy's running mate as the vice presidential candidate. The other formidable candidate was Hubert Humphrey, who was a U.S. Senator from Minnesota. He also competed against Kennedy for the nomination. Humphrey was known for his liberal stance and strong advocacy for civil rights. Then there was Adlai Stevenson. Stevenson, a former governor of Illinois and the Democratic presidential nominee in 1952 and 1956, initially sought the nomination for the third time, but later withdrew from the race. John F. Kennedy's ability to secure the Democratic nomination demonstrated his political acumen and broad appeal within the party, paving the way for his successful presidential campaign. Chapter 2: The Experienced Nixon. On the other side of the aisle stood Richard Nixon, the vice president under President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Nixon, a seasoned politician, leveraged his experience in foreign policy and domestic issues. In the 1960 Republican Party primaries, Richard Nixon faced minimal opposition as he was the clear frontrunner and the party's incumbent vice president under President Dwight D. Eisenhower.
100 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was asked, during the dark days of the tragic war between the states, whether he thought God was on his side. His answer was, "My concern is not whether God is on our side, but whether we are on God's side."
Consequently, Nixon did not have a highly contested primary race, and he easily secured the Republican nomination for the presidential election in 1960. Unlike the Democratic primaries, where multiple candidates vied for the nomination, the Republican primaries of 1960 were characterized by Nixon's dominant position within the party. Having served as Eisenhower's vice president for 8 years, Nixon positioned himself as the candidate of continuity, promising stability amid Cold War tensions and economic concerns. Chapter 3: Televised Debates and Political Theater. The head-to-head matchup in 1960 also made history with the first ever televised debates between JFK and Nixon, transforming American politics. Kennedy's charisma and ease before the camera stood in stark contrast to Nixon's reserved appearance, emphasizing the visual power of television.
What is the party record that we lead? I come out of the Democratic Party, which in this century has produced Woodrow Wilson and Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman, and which supported and sustained these programs which I've discussed tonight. Mr. Nixon comes out of the Republican Party. He was nominated by it. And it is a fact that through most of these last 25 years, the Republican leadership has opposed federal aid for education, medical care for the aged, development of the Tennessee Valley, development of our natural resources. I think Mr. Nixon is an effective leader of his party. I hope he would grant me the same. The question before us is, which point of view And which party do we want to lead the United States?
Nixon, recovering from illness, appeared visibly tired and pale during the televised debates. His physical appearance raised concerns and became a focal point for viewers. In contrast to John F. Kennedy's youthful vigor and poised demeanor, Nixon's reserved appearance may have contributed to a perceived lack of vitality and energy. While Nixon focused on policy details in his opening statement, the visual impact of the medium highlighted the disparity in presentation style between the two candidates. I'm sure Nixon, in hindsight, would have prepared for television with perhaps the right media advisor. Do you think this was the reason for his presidential race failure? I guess we'll never know, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a big reason people voted for JFK. Chapter 4: The Election Day Drama. As the election drew near, the nation was on edge. Kennedy's Catholic faith and Nixon's anti-communist stance played significant roles. On Election Day, the outcome was incredibly close. The passion of people and their country's future was on the ballot. As close as it was clear they weren't fully convinced with the current direction the nation was on. The presidential race between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy was remarkably close and remains one of the tightest elections in U.S. history. The popular vote margin was extremely narrow, with Kennedy winning by a slim percentage. Kennedy received about 34,220,984 popular votes, 49.72%, while Nixon secured approximately 34,108,157 votes, or 49.55%. The Electoral College results were also close, with Kennedy winning 303 electoral votes to Nixon's 219. The outcome of the election was not clear until the next day, as the race was so closely contested. The televised debates, Kennedy's charisma, and effective campaigning played a significant role in shaping public perception and likely influenced the final results. Despite the narrow victory, Kennedy's presidency marked a turning point in American politics, bringing a new generation of leadership to the forefront. The nation had elected its youngest president, marking a shift in leadership style and generational change. Chapter 5: Legacy and Impact. In 1960, John F. Kennedy was elected as the 35th President of the United States, capturing the nation's attention with his youthful vigor and promise.
What your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Fast forward to October 1962, just about a year before tragedy struck. The world held its breath during the Cuban Missile Crisis, a tense standoff between the U.S. and the Soviet Union over missiles deployed in Cuba. Kennedy's leadership during the 13-day crisis is remembered as a pivotal moment in history, navigating the United States away from the brink of nuclear conflict through strategic diplomacy. However, the promise of Kennedy's presidency was cut short. On November 22nd, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, tragedy struck. President Kennedy was assassinated, leaving the nation in shock and mourning. Meanwhile, Nixon's political journey continued, eventually leading to his own presidency. The 1960 election set the stage for future political dynamics, shaping the nation's trajectory in the turbulent 1960s. One does have to wonder, what would have happened if President Kennedy would have never been assassinated, and possibly even re-elected? Would Lyndon B. Johnson still be the next president, or would Richard Nixon even have any presidential future? This is a question no one can answer, but definitely a question you should think about. What do you think? Comment below. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the JFK versus Nixon presidential race. Subscribe for more insights into the pivotal moments that shaped our world. This is History Everywhere, where the past unfolds in every chapter of our shared history.